Hey, good morning. Welcome to Talking Church. Glad that you can join us again today. If you're watching live, big welcome to you. If you're watching on catch up a little bit later on, I know you're going to enjoy your time with us today. So if you are watching live, why don't you give us a shout out where you're watching from? I know our friends in New York will be getting up. Yep, the friends from New York are up already. Hello, June. Hello to the guys in Connecticut. Good that you're with us, and different people. We've got Forge, and normally you would hear them roar, but they're not in the room. We're still getting some maintenance issues sorted in the studio, so they're downstairs. So give us a cheer, Forge. Okay, you'll hear a vague shout in a moment. So they're downstairs, and let us know where you are watching from. Here we are. We are now in the month of March, ploughing through the month of March, and we've got some spring happening. We've got tulips breaking out, some blossoms on the trees. So that's always a good sign that summer is on the way. So once again, warm welcome where you're watching from. I am joined today by a very, very special guest who's come all the way from Australia. And I'm going to introduce to you Pastor Paul McCulloch. He's here with his lovely wife, Elmes, and they have been with us in the Life of Family Church for a week, helping us to look at how healthy our church is, looking at different departments, things that we do, why we do things, and that's been a really, really good time spent together. But I thought I would grab him this morning, I would grab you today, Paul, just to spend some time with the Talking Church community around the subject of the hallmarks of a healthy church. Now, you can look on social media these days and hear a lot of people chirping on about toxic church and ugly church, and how church is still the plan of God. And because it's got people in it, sometimes things aren't done perfectly, but it is still the plan of God. And I really believe that there are hallmarks to what a healthy church is. And when I look at Family Church, I see a healthy church. Made up of humans, but it's a healthy church. So we thought we would open this up a little bit. So if you've got any comments today, why don't you shout out and put some questions in? But I'm going to welcome you now to put your hands together wherever you are. I think that's funny, people in the living room going, hey, yo, Paul. People at home working, clapping as they're driving and stuff like that. Feeling the love. So welcome, Pastor Paul, and I'm going to call you Paul because we're super chatty here. You are pastor, and pastor an incredible church in Australia. Not going to do any impressions, no accents. I'm not.
I won't try and do any either.
We'll just meet in the middle there, of common ground there. But would you like just to tell the folk a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what you do?
Sure. Well, Pastor Paul McCulloch. I'm married to Elise. We've got 3 adult children.
How long have you been married, Paul?
39 years next month. 39. I got married very young. Very young,
Like straight after you were born, pretty much.
Pretty much. So, been married to Elise. It's been incredible. 3 adult children, all married. We've got 5 grandchildren, which is amazing. We love them. And 7 years ago, we moved to the Central Coast, which is just north of Sydney, and to be part of the team with Pastors Mark and Darlene Check at Hope Unlimited Church.
And a lot of people would remember Darlene Check from obviously the early days or the earlier days of Hillsong, and some of that incredible worship that she was heading up. Just shout to the Lord. When that whole moment broke, and it was almost like a revolution in church sound, because we'd kind of, what's next? And then suddenly you had that shout to the Lord, then there was a series of albums, and just incredible worshiper, hey?
It's an incredible season in God. God really used that season to really bring people back into a real place of worship. And, both Mark and Darlene are incredible leaders, incredible people.
And I think it's wonderful that they didn't allow Christianity to lock them into, you are worship leaders. But they found the shedding of a skin, and really now are apostolic leaders over quite a few churches in Australia and America. I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
So we have 6 campuses in Australia. All based around the Central Coast, Hunter region, which is just north of Sydney. We also have 3 campuses in the USA. And we have, I think, 5 campuses in India. It's growing quickly. But those campuses overseas, they're run by a person that oversees them, Pastor Mark. And there is a global Hope UC, so they'll meet regularly to discuss that. But in terms of hands-on in the USA and India, that's pretty much run by the people overseeing them.
Now, anyone that remembers Pastor Darlene knows that she had just this huge, massive, tender heart in worship. Has that carried over now in the same way to what she's doing with people in pastoring?
She's very much a people person.
Yeah.
She loves people.
I would assume that. I've never met her, but I would assume that.
Yeah, look, I think one of her strengths is that she is interested in the detail of people's lives. She wants to ensure that we're all focused on making people feel like they're cared for, that they're valuable. I don't want to give too many details away because it's not my story, but I mean, she's invited me into places to sit with people on their deathbeds and just sit with them and pray with them.
She loves people to the core.
She loves people to the core, And then you've got Pastor Mark, who's just an incredible visionary leader in his own right. Also runs a business, 4B Media, which, is involved in getting the gospel around to countries in Central Asia.
Beautiful.
So they're an incredible couple, and it's a privilege to work for them. I've learned a lot. And so my role is I'm on the eldership team, but I also lead our campus in Gosford.
And that's where we met, wasn't it?
It was where we met.
I was travelling through with Pastor Steve Carey, or when we're in Australia, we call him Steve-O.
Steve-O, yeah.
He loves
Steve-O.
that. Steve-O.
Yeah. You'd be Elmesy.
Elmesy, yeah. Yeah, not Elmo or something. No, Elmesy. I'd be Elmesy, yeah. Isn't it brilliant how I love how Australians can take any name and just abbreviate it.
Yeah.
A classic example. Yeah, you don't keep your own name. Now, your nickname is Slim.
That's correct.
That's Slim. Yeah. But I would be Elmesy.
Elmesy.
All right.
Yeah. It wouldn't be Elmso. Elmso doesn't have the same ring as Elmsy.
Yeah, and Elmo is not good.
No. No, we don't want to be liking it to that.
Elmo. No, Elmsy.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. All right, you watch. I'm going to come out and people are going to be over lunch going, good eye, Elmsy. In that accent.
Yeah.
Because you've got to have that Australian accent to pull off some of his names, haven't you?
Yeah, you do, really.
It's like McDonald's, Macca's.
It's
got, it's not, let's go to McDonald's. It's, let's go have a Macca's, isn't it? And I love that.
Yeah. It's interesting. A few people have said they thought my accent would be broader.
Okay.
Right, but I think it's because in Australia, a lot of Australia live in coastal city regions. So if you're in the city, it's probably a little more not Steve Irwin-ish, right?
Yeah.
But if you're further north of the country and further west, so in the farms, you talk a lot slower and then you start to sound more Australian.
I'm just seeing if everyone's picking up on my new nickname here, Elmsy. And they will.
Yeah, they will.
Some of them are in fear and trepidation of what will happen if I call him Elmsy. We'll just leave that out there.
Sure.
Will lightning come down and all that stuff. But not in Australia, because everyone has got a nickname. Everybody is abbreviated.
Yeah.
Now, okay, Hope UC. What's that stand for?
Hope Unlimited Church.
Hope Unlimited Church.
Yeah.
And again, you've got your own website, so if you're watching and you want to look at this a little bit more, you can go and have a dig around that.
Yeah.
Now, I was in Gosford we went on that rabbit trail, but it was all about Pastor Steve Carey being called Steve-O.
Yeah, Steve-O.
And
so Stu, you call Stuart Stu, we'd call him Stewie.
Stewie.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that fits. So we got Elmsy. Stewie.
Yeah, Steve-O. Yeah.
What about Jeff? What would Jeff? That's an interest to him. Pastor Jeff.
Yeah, Jeffro.
I love it. We have actually dug that one out because all the Australians were sent from Portsmouth. They stole a loaf of bread. We put them on a ship, sent them to paradise. We stayed in the rain.
That's right.
Bit of a bad strategy.
Best move you ever made for us.
Yeah, it's like, let's send our prisoners to paradise and we'll stay in the rain.
Yeah.
I've got problems. I've got issues with that. But you can hear him coming out. But yeah, we have called Jeffrey. No, he hates Jeffrey. Jeffro.
Yeah, Jeffro.
And what about Paul? We got Pastor Paul.
Pastor Paul. Paul's a hard one. So I'm Paul.
Yeah.
But I got Slim.
Okay.
So we'd have to find something. What's his last name?
Drodger.
Yeah, Drodgy.
Okay, all right, okay. Let's get back on track.
D-Rodge.
I could sit here all day doing this, but that really wouldn't be good for talking.
It wouldn't help
We need to get some God stuff in there, right?
Yeah, great.
So, okay, you've been here, Paul, and we met you in Gosford, and me and Steve-O, and I was just so impressed with how you had a way of looking at church and being able to monitor health, because it's an easy thing to say, our church is healthy. And when I met you, I really wanted to be vulnerable and say, okay, come and live in our church for a week.
Yeah.
You tell us if it's healthy, or also tell us things that could make us healthier.
Yes.
Now, again, I hope you've had a good experience.
Yeah.
What has been your initial thought working in the engine with all the leaders of family church? Are we a healthy church?
I think you are a healthy church. I think there's really strong elements here that enable great connection, great discipleship. I love Forge Ministry School, an opportunity for people to grow in the very foundational things of the Word and who Jesus is and the Holy Spirit moving in their life. We'll have our meeting tomorrow, but I think there are some little tweaks that can be made.
Beautiful.
That actually help people not only engage in what they feel their calling is, but also helping your leaders keep focused on the vision and engaging your people in the vision. Just little simple things that can make a big difference. I think one of the challenges that I've wrestled with in church life, I worked for a church previously at Hope UC, been in ministry a long time. One of the constant wrestles for me has been just the challenge of aligning, the theory of God's Word very practically in our lives, the outworking of it in our lives. There often seems to be a gap. We can be in church on Sunday and we can have our hands raised and worship Him. And, we sing songs about faith and trusting in Jesus and believing in Jesus. But then during the week, when we get to some sense of crisis or chaos, and it comes time to trust in God and to put those things into place, there's a gap. Yeah. And I think that's some of the things that the world struggles with the church as well. They see this gap between what we say we believe and what we actually live out.
Especially when they experience what we would call more high church, where in society, people are more and more saying, what's the gowns? What's the stuff that's happening here? How does that fit in life? Yeah. So ever so quickly, it's been a joy for me to be able just to say, I really trust this guy. Yeah. I'm going to step back. I'm not going to govern conversations. I want you to spend time with all my leaders. Yes. It's been fun because every person in the body of Christ can bring something new if we've got teachable hearts. Absolutely. When we talk about healthy church, I'm just smiling because my sister-in-law has already picked up on it, Elmsy. She's on it already. Thank you, June. I knew that wouldn't take you long. But when we look at healthy church, that's a big statement, especially when there's so much nonsense at the moment with people that have been offended in church, talking about toxic church and church is wrong and church needs to be deconstructed. Yeah. No, we need to rediscover ourselves. That's, to me, the thing. What would you say are 2 or 3 of the hallmarks of a healthy church? Yeah. I use an example of, I've got a friend who's an F-18 pilot. Okay. And he showed me I was in the military for 9 years. He showed me a cockpit of an F-18, and there's 323 switches in that cockpit. And so if you think about it, you're flying at twice the speed of sound, and there's 323 switches you've got to think about. He said, we don't think about that. We have a head-up display, and on that head-up display are 3 things. And so he said the first thing is our altitude. We want to make sure we're at the right height so we don't run into a mountain. Hey, I saw Top Gun. I saw Maverick. It's important. Yeah, it's important. So there's altitude, there's target, and there's another one that has just slipped my mind. Speed, airspeed. Yeah. So altitude, airspeed, target. So when you look at those things, the 3 big things in church that I believe are the hallmarks for a healthy church. Jesus summed up the commandments in 2, love God, love people, and then he gave the Great Commission. Okay, make disciples of all men. So for me, they're the 3 big rocks. So how are we teaching people to learn who God is and grow in their love of God? That's one. Yeah. And, there's very detailed through that. There's a whole lot of information through that. But the other one is how are we teaching people to love one another? And that's the big passion for me, because I think it's in rubbing shoulders with other people that the rough edges of who we are come out. You stay with someone long enough. I used to do youth missions trips with my youth leaders, and before we would go away, we'd spend weeks spending time preparing, and I'd say this to them. I'd say, before the end of the 2 weeks, you'll hate me. And they used to say, why are you saying that?
And I said, because you will. You've never had to live in close proximity to me. You've never had to rub shoulders day to day with me. And there are things about my personality that are really going to annoy you. And so then we would come up with a plan of how do we deal with that when someone in the team is just fed up with somebody else. But that's actually the discipleship plan. When we have this close relationship with one another, then we find out the things in our own life that God wants us to address and deal with. See, I don't have to forgive someone until they've offended me.
That's true. I heard somebody put it this way once, and I liked it. But some people are great and some people great.
Yeah.
But both are a gift of God.
Yes.
Some people are great in your life, but other people God positions in your life to grate you.
Yeah.
Like a pumice stone or a cheese grater.
Yes.
To get dead skin and rough skin off of you.
Yes.
But if you're not exposed to people that are there to help you develop, you're going to have limited growth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an opportunity to actually implement the principles that Jesus talked to us about in terms of relationships. If you look at a lot of the New Testament, both Jesus' teachings and Paul, a lot of it is based around relationships, particularly Paul in church life. He's dealing with relationships that weren't being resolved in church life. He talks about if you're about to receive communion and you have an issue with your brother and sister, put it down and go and resolve it. And if you don't, this is why some of you are sick and even dying, because you're carrying this offense and this bitterness and it's unresolved and you're eating unworthily because, Christ died not just for our salvation, but, for the restoration of our relationships with him and one another.
And wholeness. Sometimes I love, the stories in the Bible of a woman with the issue of blood. But that was just one issue. I meet a lot of people, the people with the issue of this, the people with the issue of that.
Yeah.
And sometimes, sadly, it's people with the issue of people.
Yeah.
Just like Jesus brought wholeness to the woman with the issue of blood, he wants to bring wholeness to people that have issues with people.
Yeah.
So the three hallmarks that you pull out of the box, Paul, is love God.
Yeah.
Love people.
Yeah.
And know the purpose of the church.
Yes.
Let's continue to massage that middle one, which is the loving of people.
Yeah.
Because let's talk a little bit about the COVID season, lockdown.
Yeah.
Now, America had kind of a shorter experience of lockdown than what we did in the UK. For us, it was like 15, 16 months.
Yeah.
I know it was very similar in Australia.
Yeah.
And so suddenly, we were with you like 2 weeks before. Me and Steve-O were with you 2 weeks before. Got on a plane, remember flying back. And I remember saying to Steve-O, Pastor Steve-O, hey, look at these guys wearing masks. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And then suddenly, 2 weeks later, boom, the world had stopped, we thought, for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be over a year and a half.
Yeah.
But the church is not just here now, but the church is stronger and focused now in a powerful way. What's some things that really did get affected in that breakdown? If church is about loving God, loving people, having purpose, what were some of the things that were really tried and tested, Paul, during that time?
I think when it comes to loving people, one of the big things to come out of that is that connection has to be intentional and it has to be deep. You can come to church on a Sunday and you can say hello to one another, but it's not deep and it's not necessarily connection. We have connect groups, life groups, and we have a core of people. We maybe have 20% of our congregation that are regularly engaged in a connect group, which is great. But that leaves 80% of the congregation that are just coming on a Sunday, maybe coming once a month, and whatever. And then so through COVID, all of a sudden they found that they're disconnected. And so trying to find out if people needed support or not was a tricky thing because, some people are reluctant to give their details to the church because they're a little bit suspicious of what might happen there. And so, I read a book many years ago. We talk about a healthy church. I read a book decades ago by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah. It was a very popular book. And he made this statement about finances. He said, you can appear to be wealthy. He said, but you're only as wealthy as long as you'll last if your income stops coming in. And so he said, if you want to work out how wealthy you are, work out how long your savings will last. So you're 3 months wealthy or you're 12 months wealthy, right? And I look at that in church terms. When COVID came,
That's really good.
We were only as healthy as the strong connections that we had in our small groups, really. I mean, we did a lot of things to try and engage people that weren't in small groups, but we were really only as healthy as long as people could last without, external connections in terms of Sunday church. And, you could go to online messages and things like that. So when we came back, we found that there was, a percentage of people that just didn't come back to church. They deconstructed their faith, or they were just happy to watch online church.
Found a new rhythm.
Yeah, those kind of things. But also what we have found is that there is a whole new demographic of people that are coming back to church that have never been to church before. We've got people that are saying, I've been sitting at home and I just felt this urge to come to church. I don't know why. I've never been to church before. I looked up on Google, saw your church and came in. We have numbers of stories of that happening.
We're hearing that a lot as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, people, the fields are ripe, people are in pursuit. What I've loved as we've spent time together is hearing some of the sameness of what God's doing in Australia with you guys in Hope UC.
Yes.
And us here in Family Church, one kingdom, one experience.
Yes.
So the people that are coming in, what are they looking for?
They're looking for connection.
That's it.
That's exactly what they're looking for. And that's the opportunity for us as a church, I think, moving forward. I mean, social media, all of those kinds of things, it's really narrowing down our social connections. It's not the same looking on a screen and talking on a screen.
Well, it's projection based.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, you did something brilliant with our leaders on Saturday morning as a part of being with us, Paul, and you showed photos that people will put up versus the real photo.
Yes.
And it was funny yet so true.
Yeah.
That social media is a good place for connection, for information.
Yeah.
But not for doing deep life with.
No.
Because you can airbrush everything.
Yeah.
And project this fake persona.
Yeah.
That there's no reality in.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife and I were going through some photos last night of a trip we did years ago. And my wife started laughing because there was this photo of us, and because it was cold, I had this double chin because I had my head down like that. And I had the thought, that's not going up on social media, because it doesn't look just quite right.
Well, you see, what's brilliant, and everybody's done it to some degree, it's like when you watch church photos on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I know, because I'm a pastor, it's like you've gone to the very edge of the last person in the room.
Yes.
And got their head.
Yeah.
Because everyone in us, we want people to know our church is doing great, But it's amazing that photos of churches, photos of people, it's like some airbrushing, when it's overdone, you're like, no, come on, cut back on the airbrush a little bit.
Yeah.
But is that something in people that wants to say, I don't want you to know me or what's really happening. I want to paint the picture for you to know me by.
I think we tend, there's a identity and insecurity issue that sort of can dwell in all of us to a degree, because we want to be loved and we want to be accepted. And hopefully we get to a point in our relationship with Christ where our identity is so strong in him that we're able to, we feel it, but we're anchored on who Christ is. So I think that exists in all of us. But I think also, we want people to think that what we're involved in is actually good and attractive in a church sense, if we're posting those kind of things. But I think also there is a bit of a reluctance in all of us to enter into a bit of, what I call chaos. Those uncomfortable places where vulnerability about, am I going to be received? Am I going to be accepted?
Because if we live in a social media driven age now, people somebody's looked us on the website and their understanding or experience of communities of people should be very different to kingdom people.
Yeah.
But when they come through the doors for the first time with preconceived ideas of Easter, christenings, we've got to make sure that they come into an environment where they can be them.
Yes.
How do we do that?
I think part of that is actually thinking about what we project as a Christian culture. So, for example, I do some volunteer work for a professional football club. We've got one of the players who's Brazilian coming to our church, and I meet with him regularly, and he often asks me, what does this word mean?
Yeah.
What does that word mean? And it's not just because he's Brazilian, it's because he's new to faith. And we use a language in church life.
Zionese, as it was termed.
Yes, Zionese. I love that term. We call it Christianese, We have this language that's foreign to the world. Mm. And that also creates a bit of an uncomfortable barrier, So I think we need to be comfortable with the language that we use, that it's not too Zionese. That
also explaining ourselves, right? It's like I've spoken to worship teams at different times and said, we can say, hey, church, lift your hands. But if you've got a room full of people there that have never been to church, the only other time they've seen that context is in a bank robbery movie.
Yes.
And it's almost having that consciousness to say, hey, church, let's lift our hands. We lift our hands because.
Exactly.
And realise, if we're dealing with this post-millennium, if we're dealing with this age where some have got zero experience of church, it doesn't stop us doing what we're doing. Yeah. But we've got to include them on the journey.
Yes. Even the worship songs we sing.
True.
So I don't know whether you sing that here, but there's a great song that I love. You're called Jireh. Yeah. Jireh, you are enough. Yeah. To a non-believer that comes in.
What's Jireh?
What does Jireh mean? Yeah. And so at the end of that, we can say how incredible it is to worship Jireh. He's our provider. He is enough. I
always used to say that even about some of the old hymns, because you could go in the church and hear, there is a flow of blood that comes from Emmanuel's veins. That sounds really, if you've never been in church, there's a flow of blood coming from Emmanuel's veins. It's we understand that.
Yes.
It's like I had the same thing with the song Jireh. Mm-hmm. That I've said, I love that song, but we've got to explain to people why they're looking around and there's a room full of people, like some of them crying, going, Jireh. Yeah. And we say Jireh because it's one of the names of God. Yes. It's thinking about those who are coming in for the first time. Yeah. Front door is important as well, right? Yeah. The welcome they get. To me, I've experienced over the years that people have somewhat made their mind up where they're coming again. Before the worship, before the preaching, it's how do they feel when they come through the doors? Now, you saw Portsmouth on Sunday. Yeah. It's an ugly old school, a sports hall where you have to go down a corridor. Yeah. That could be a really long experience to get to the welcome. We've got to think. Yeah. How do we make people feel comfortable, right? Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Credit to you guys. When we drove into the car park at Portsmouth, the team in the car park.
Aren't they brilliant?
Oh, I took a photo with them. They were shocked. I got out. I said, I need a photo with you guys. You guys are amazing, right? I felt welcome right from, hadn't even got out of the car yet.
Did you meet the Don?
I don't know which one.
Yeah, because if it was a Don, that's Stuart's dad. Stewie's dad.
Stewie's dad?
Yeah.
I got the photo. Yeah. I got the photo.
I'll tell you if it's the Don.
I thought it was just, right from the word go.
Yeah, that's the Don.
That's the Don?
That is Pastor Stuart, or Pastor Stewie, right? Yeah. That's his dad. That's his mum.
Oh, that was his mum too.
That's Nacho. And that's your wife next year.
Yeah, that's right.
Just in case.
Yeah, just in case I didn't recognise her. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So you jumped out of the car and took a photo?
I jumped out of the car and took a photo. I was so impressed with their welcome. And I just wanted to encourage them.
Oh, man.
Because they're out there in the cold doing a great job. Yeah. And I wanted to let them know, hey, I really appreciated what you do, And you're right. It's from the very car park. And we say that in Hope UC as well. Right from the car park all the way. And now, to be fair, we don't always have people on car park because sometimes it's hard to get volunteers.
But, now, if somebody was watching, this is a good centre camera moment, right? Okay. Somebody's sitting in church going, I want to get on, I suppose I should get on the team. Why would I join a car park team? Go on, Paul. Why should they join the car park team in Family Church?
Car park team is one of the most important places that you can serve. Because it's the initial impression. They say first impressions are the most important.
It's true.
It's the initial impression that people get when they come to your church. So if they go to a show, like a secular show or something like that, there's no one in the car park to greet them. They've got to find their way in. They've got to wait till they get inside before they ask someone, hey, where do I go? What do I do? But when you've got people that are smiling, that are welcoming you, it does something in your soul right from the very start. And what it does is, even if you're negative, say you've been dragged along there by someone to attend the church that day, maybe there's a baptism on and they say, we want you to come, or a baby dedication. It just opens their heart a little bit. It just breaks down the little bit of a wall that might be there.
Especially when they hear that everyone's volunteers.
Yes.
But they could not be there.
Yeah.
What we've tried to do in family church, and I know you guys would be doing the same, is I've always in my heart as a visionary tried to create a flow. So the moment they hit the car park, Andy's little ideal world, the moment they hit the car park, a flow begins like an escalator.
Yeah.
All they've got to do is stand in position, and the culture of the church will bring them from the car park through
Keeps
corridors of
in.
warm welcome,
Yeah.
seated comfortably,
Yeah.
so that then the other teams can, and that's hosting teams. And, we've said time and time again, it's so important. Hosting teams are so
Yes,
important.
absolutely.
That we represent that. Now, time shooting along, I could sit here all day with you, Paul. I love this stuff.
I would just say one thing there, that it's not about the task. It's actually about the impact that you have on people.
Yeah.
One of the challenges in volunteering in these roles is that we get focused on the task after a while because it's familiar to us. But if we can continually re-engage ourselves in the fact that, no, this is actually about creating a welcoming place for the people that are going to come that maybe don't know Jesus, or maybe they've had a bad week and are struggling in their faith.
Always comes back to the why behind the what.
Exactly.
We've got a few minutes left. I want to zoom back in on the importance of connectivity, because we've spoken and we've mentioned it a bit this morning, that one of the key things, if not the key thing, that got shut down in lockdown was connectivity.
Yes.
Now, we're similar to you. We have a number of congregations in England. We have a congregation in Philippines. We have a beautiful online congregation. But we're a community of people that are in places in life where they can't get to a normal. So we've got this community called Online Church, and they've got their own Connect group.
Yes.
So no one's excluded from this conversation.
Yeah.
Now, you can't make people want connectivity. Because some people's wiring is very much, I go to church on Sunday, it takes 2 hours, and I got on with the rest of my life. But we've got to contend to a different culture than that. Now, the thing I think, in hindsight, that really got blasted exposed during lockdown was our desperate need, not for preaching, we could get that, teaching, connectivity, being connected with other believers. Could you speak into that?
Yeah, I think I've experienced this, of all places, in our high school program, the power of authentic community. So we use the term connection. We're trying to put on-ramps, we call them on-ramps, into our Connect groups. So as you say, not everyone might be able to get into a Connect group because, the season of their life might be just so big and so busy with work or family. But there are other on-ramps that we try and create, which you might call subgroups. So we might have one night a month, or, every Wednesday we have what's called sisters. So we get 30 or 40 women that come to that couldn't normally go to perhaps a life group. So at least it's still a place of connection. And then what we do is we break out into smaller groups towards the end of that, and they can pray for each other, and they can share about what's going on in their world. So it's kind of another stepping stone towards that, but at least we're creating connection for them. But authentic community, it goes really deep, and it takes a lot of trust in people's lives to be able to be vulnerable in those spaces, and it's a process. And so I was involved in a high school program where we put some principles in place around how that group should run, and we got a mix of grade 10, 11, 12 boys, so 16 to 18. Some of them high academic, some of them had been expelled from school, some of them were athletes, big mix. And the whole idea of that was to bring them together, teach them principles about how to actually resolve chaos and conflict, because we did activities that brought them to a place where they had to wrestle with some of these things in their life as to how they responded. And one day we were running the program, and one of the boys got upset with one of the other ones, and a fight broke out. We had to break it up. He left the room. And long story short, we brought him back in, and he was given a number of options. We said, you can come to the group and renegotiate the group deal that we have. So that is about respecting one another, listening to one another, apologising if you need to, those sorts of things. Or you can apologise and we just move on, or you're telling us that you want to leave the group. And so he didn't want to leave the group because that meant he had to go to class then, to go to school lessons. So he came in and he made the decision that, this is quite a way into the course, that he was going to apologise, humble himself and apologise. He apologised to that group, and instantly all of those boys came in and got around him
Wow.
and just, said, hey, it's okay, it's fine. And he learned an incredible lesson. That was an incredible lesson of growth, that it was okay to actually apologize. It was okay to show an expression of hurt and anger, because you're in a safe community. And I think that's the deep level of connection, relationship that Jesus calls us all into. But it's really difficult because a lot of us want to live in this space where if we get offended or if, something hurts us, rather than deal with it or rather than, confront it in a biblical way, we'll just leave the church, or we'll stop going to a connect group, or we'll just find another way to hide it.
Instead of deal with it.
Instead of dealing with it.
One of my favourite verses on that, Paul, is, he who isolates himself, it's not wise.
Yeah.
He seeks his own,
Yeah.
rages against all wise counsel.
Yes.
But there's something in us that when there's an issue or a vulnerability, or I want people to know the real me, we choose isolation.
Yeah.
When actually we should purposely choose, let me get into an authentic community. I love that, authentic.
Yes.
Because we've got our connect groups in Family Church, but we've also got, like you say, a number of other authentic small groups. It's like the worship team. They don't just rehearse on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
There's a real community where they're doing life together.
Yeah.
The community teams and stuff like that. So
Yes.
I've had to think in my mind, let's break the one size fits all. Years ago it was the 3 W's, the Ralph Neighbour,
Oh, yeah,
and we all tried to follow
welcome
a system.
worship, word works, yeah.
Well, we've got to let it just morph, but look for key ingredients of authentic, where
Yes.
people can feel they can walk with people and stick
Yeah.
around and work stuff through.
Yeah.
We have a chance right now, coming out of lockdown, to not deconstruct, but rediscover church using an old blueprint of things that were always in the Bible.
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about here, Paul, is right at the top. And even what I love about our online congregation, they've still got, even though one person's in Connecticut, one's in New York, one's here, they meet online for their connection.
Yeah.
But it's real.
Yeah.
They pray for each other.
Yeah.
To me, in any group, everybody over the course of a year needs a hug, someone to pray with them, to just go, guys, will you stand with me?
Yeah.
And people don't seem to understand that this was the thing that was robbed during lockdown.
Yeah.
It wasn't, the Bible says so well, it says you may have many teachers, you don't have many fathers.
Yes.
What's that saying?
Yeah.
You have content, but you don't have relationship.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm the same as you. I want to push as many people. Actually, Pastor Stu, or Pastor Stewie, as he's known
Stewie.
now, he stood in front of a church before lockdown and said, I have a vision for 100% of a church in small groups. Mm-hmm. And I've said to, Pastor Stewie, don't let go of that.
Yeah.
Because that's got to be our goal. Even if we hit 9, we can't
exactly
recede
have
back.
the target.
Yeah.
If you aim for nothing, you'll hit it
every time. Yeah. People watching that maybe haven't yet engaged. Again, I call it big church, more church. It's like when somebody says on Sunday morning, "Listen, we've been along, love what you're doing, not our cup of tea." And they're looking at you as almost like there's no love in this place. My go-to question is, have you experienced big church and small church? Mm-hmm. And most of the time they'll say no, which means they've experienced the gathering.
Yes.
But they've not experienced who we are in the scattering.
Yeah.
And that's looking at a body and not seeing it's made of cells. Yeah. And I always encourage them, please, maybe before you move on, why don't you experience a small group expression?
Yes. Yeah.
Because it may make sense.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah, totally. I mean, Jesus said the harvest is ripe, for the labourers are few. There's a responsibility on the church congregation as well to not just look at their own group of friends, but to look outward as well and be inclusive. But I would also say just try a small group. Like, find out if there's a small group that you can join, try it, and if they're not your people, then just be honest and say, hey, we're not really connecting here, and then go and find another group to try. Sometimes we are reluctant to take the ownership of our own connection. We want everyone else to do it for us. But I would just encourage people, just be brave, just be bold, and just say, hey, we need to connect. We need to be intentional about connection. Let's find a place. Let's find a home.
And it doesn't have to feel like Alcoholics Anonymous.
No.
But sometimes it's like, People may feel we're wanting people to sit in a room with a bunch of strangers and go, hi, my name's so-and-so. Here's my issues.
Yeah.
And that would be a terrible connect group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yet the vulnerability of that will naturally appear if there's authenticity in connection.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So, guys, you are getting a huge encouragement to those who are in connect groups. Well done. Keep at it. Get ready to run one. But maybe if you're watching and you've come out of lockdown or you've never really had the bent towards being in a small group, we're just sending out that cry, that clarion call again today. Give it a go. Give it a go. Because it's a part of God's design for our church experience, isn't it?
Amen.
Excellent. Well, we've had a brilliant morning. Is there anything else you want to share today that's on your heart? More people are watching and tuned in.
I would just encourage people that your story is valuable. Like your life experience is valuable. And that when other people hear that, many times you'll encourage them in some way that you won't even know or understand. So never underestimate what God has done in your life. Never underestimate even the difficult times in your life and the challenges that you've had to work through, because you have something to contribute. That's why Paul calls it the body, that each part has its place and each part contributes to make others whole. So I just encourage you in that.
That's brilliant. Hey, it's been a good morning. Make sure you share this to some of your friends and family. Remember, dare to share and share because we care. All those good cheesy slogans that we found and discovered during lockdown. But it's powerful. We have this thing called social media where at the moment we can do what we want to most degree with Christianity on it. Let's not miss that moment. Share this to some friends. Go, hey, maybe you should tune into Talking Church. There's always good chats on there. And come back and join us next week, same time, same place, as we continue to talk church. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for the
Paul,
invite.
it's brilliant having you here from Australia, and I'm sure you've enjoyed it as well. So I will see you same time, same place next week for Talking Church. God bless.
God bless.